Good morning. I thought I'd talk to you today about things that are natural and things that are artificial. And that might seem like an odd thing to be talking about, but I think it's actually very important for our world at the moment. So I've just become a gardener. And one of the things you discover when you're a gardener is that, at least in one sense, gardens are artificial. People think of them as very natural, they're full of plants and so on. But actually, you have to work very hard to make the garden look like a garden and not like an overrun bunch of plants just thrown together. So we make this distinction all the time between natural and artificial. And actually, some of the time that distinction makes sense, but a lot of the time it doesn't make sense as much as we think it does. So a lot of the most deadly poisons are made by natural creatures, snakes and spiders, scorpions. A lot of the things that we rely on for our lives and which are healthy for us are nevertheless artificial. Or some things began as natural. Aspirin was originally extracted from weeping willows, but now it is made artificially. We rely on these things for our survival. I think the big discovery, the big realization in gardening is that actually human beings have always shaped the world in which we live. We've always changed the natural world to suit us. So one of the discoveries that recent scientists have made in the Amazon is that the Amazon jungle, which looks just completely natural in the sense of untouched by human beings, is in fact far from it. Local people have changed the way the Amazon jungle grows forever. That is always what people have done. We have shaped the world that we live in. And maybe part of what we should remember is that human beings are part of nature. It doesn't really make sense to think of a natural world without human beings and then the human world. Human beings are part of the natural world, and we have always shaped the world. But of course, sometimes we've shaped it in ways that have improved it, grown good things that fed many people, and sometimes we've done it in ways that are destructive and which have destroyed the natural environment in which we live. And so we should think more about what we can do to improve our environment, to make our environment a good place, not just for us, but for all of God's creatures, rather than to think, oh, well, I want a garden because that is natural, or I want to take only natural remedies. I've heard some people reacting, for example, to the COVID vaccines by saying, well, Father, can't I just build up my natural immune system? Well, that's a good thing to do, but the only way to do it really effectively is to get vaccinated. So the vaccines, yes, they are artificial, but they are part of how our body naturally fights off disease. And God gave us minds, reason, and that is important. That means that our contribution to the world will always involve thinking and making and doing kinds of making and doing that the other animals cannot do. Think about the fact that human beings are certainly the only animals capable of destroying the planet that we live on. But equally, we humans are, in the current situation we're living in, the only animals capable of fixing it, of saving it. Now, that doesn't mean we should think of any old intervention. Some of our interventions might be disastrous. I must say I am very nervous at some of the plans of scientists to artificially introduce global cooling by pumping more chemicals into the upper atmosphere. That seems like a potentially very dangerous thing to do. But human ingenuity and human reason will always find a way, and especially when we allow our thinking and our acting and our making to be under the will of God, to be determined by the will of God, to be according to God's commandments, God's ordinances that we find in the scriptures and in the teaching of the church. So we live in this natural world and we should rejoice in it. It is part of God's creation, but we are part of that creation. We should rejoice in each other as God's creatures, and we should rejoice in this gift of reason that God has given us that enables us to shape the world around us. Amen.